Welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever looked at your garden and wondered why some plants absolutely thrive while others just struggle, no matter what you try? Well, the answer is usually hiding right beneath your feet. So today, we're going to jump right into the hidden science of your yard and discover exactly what's going on down there by unlocking your soil's secret. Here's our game plan for today. First, we'll meet your soil components. Then, we'll do the mason jar test. After that, we're calculating your ratios. And finally, we're going to talk about fixing your soil balance. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, meeting your soil components. So there are three fundamental materials every single gardener needs to wrap their head around. First up, we've got clay. Clay is actually fantastic because it holds onto nutrition and water incredibly well. But the downside, if it gets dry, it literally compacts into cement, totally blocking your roots from growing. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got sand. Sand is wonderfully porous, giving roots plenty of room to stretch out and grow. But water just rushes right through it, washing away all those precious nutrients and drying out super fast. And finally, there's silt. Now, silt is often thought of as the perfect middle ground, but too much of it can actually become hydrophobic, meaning water literally just runs right off the top, and it's highly susceptible to erosion. So, if they all have these major flaws, what are we actually looking for? Well, what we're ultimately aiming for is this perfect combination known as loam. You guys, loam is literally the holy grail of gardening. It's this golden ratio made up of exactly 40% sand, 40% silt, and 20% clay. This specific balance gives you the amazing drainage of sand, the nutrient retention of clay, and that perfect workable texture of silt. Which brings us to Section 2, the mason jar test. The coolest part about this is you don't need to send your soil away to some fancy, expensive lab to figure out if you have loam. You literally just need a few things you probably already have sitting in your kitchen. Just grab a clean, clear glass mason jar with a tight-fitting lid, a scoop of your garden soil, just make sure to pull out any big rocks or debris, some tap water, a single drop of ordinary liquid dish soap, and a ruler that measures in centimeters. The whole procedure is surprisingly simple. You just fill your jar halfway up with your soil, top the rest off with water, and then add that single drop of dish soap. And that soap is actually the secret ingredient here because it breaks the surface tension. Now, for step 4, you might want to stretch first because you need to shake this jar vigorously for 3 solid minutes. Really get in there to ensure everything is completely broken up and mixed. And once that arm workout is done, just set it down. Now, depending on your soil makeup, it can take up to 4 days for all that sediment to fully settle. But as the days pass and that murky water begins to clear up, it's basically like watching physics take over. You will actually see these distinct, visible layers start to form purely on their weight. The heavy sand is going to drop like a rock, firmly setting up shop as your bottom layer. Silt is the second heaviest, right? So that'll gently settle into the middle. And finally, the absolute lightest component, the clay, is going to drift down to rest at the very top. By the end of this, your water should be mostly clear, leaving you with a literal cross-section of your garden's DNA. Moving right along to Section 3, calculating your ratios. Okay, so once the weeding game is over and your layers are all settled out, it's time to grab your ruler. Now, a quick pro tip. Make sure you use the centimeter side. It gives you larger whole numbers, which just makes the math so much easier. You're going to measure the total height of all the sediment combined, and then measure the height of each individual layer. Then, you just divide the individual layer's height by that total height, and boom, you've got your exact percentage. Let's actually look at a real-world example from our source material just to make this crystal clear. Let's say your total sediment measures exactly 7 centimeters high. You measure your bottom sand layer and it comes in at 4 centimeters. So you divide 4 by 7, which gives you roughly 57% sand. And to make things easy on ourselves, we can just go ahead and round that up to 60%. Continuing with that exact same example, let's map out the whole jar. If the total is 7 centimeters and we have our 60% sand at the bottom, we might look at our middle silt layer and see it's relatively thin, giving us about 10% silt. That leaves the top clay layer making up the remaining 30%. So in this specific example, the math reveals a profile heavily weighted towards sand, followed by clay, and very little silt. But what does a 60-10-30 mix actually mean for you as a gardener? Well, to crack the code, experts use what's called a soil calculation graph. It's like a giant puzzle. You start at the bottom axis with your biggest number, in our case, 60% sand, and you track along the lines to your next biggest number, which is the 30% clay on the left side. The exact spot where those two lines intercept gives you your soil's official title. So here, we land on sandy clay loam.
It's not terrible, honestly, but it's clearly not that perfect 40-40-20 golden ratio we're dreaming of. It definitely needs a little help.
And that takes us to our final part, Section 4, Fixing Your Soil Balance. Honestly, here is the absolute best news of this entire explainer. Whether you are currently bogged down in heavy clay or you're drying out in super sandy soil, the primary solution is exactly the same for both. You just need to add organic material. We're talking things like rich compost, nutrient-dense worm castings, or decomposed leaf mold. And the best part, you don't even need to break your back aggressively tilling the stuff into the dirt. You literally just layer these organic materials right on top of your existing soil. Over time, nature will do the heavy lifting, working it down into the ground and naturally driving your garden closer to that perfect loam. There is one highly specific caveat here, though. If your mason jar test revealed that you have way too much silt, you are absolutely still going to use that organic matter layered on top. But because silty soil is incredibly light and prone to blowing away, you should really also plant a cover crop. The roots of that cover crop basically act like a giant net, locking that topsoil firmly in place so it doesn't just erode away in the wind before it even has a chance to improve. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I hear this very logical, very common question all the time. If the goal is balance and my yard has way too much sticky clay, why can't I just go buy a few bags of sand, mix it in, and instantly create beautiful, draining loam?
Okay, the answer to that is a massive, resounding no. Please, do not do this. Think about it. Sand is highly porous with lots of open space, right? And clay is made of these incredibly fine, sticky particles. If you mix those two directly together, those tiny clay particles are just going to push their way straight into the porous voids of the sand, lock together, and literally turn your garden beds into solid, impenetrable cement. There's just no quick shortcut here. Adding organic matter is truly the only safe path forward. Building genuinely good soil takes time. It takes patience. But always remember this. There is really no such thing as inherently bad soil. You simply have to learn how to work with it. Any yard, literally anywhere, can be transformed into a thriving garden if you just understand its foundational mechanics and give it the right organic inputs over time. So what hidden ratio is currently sitting quietly beneath your lawn right now? Grab a mason jar this weekend and uncover your soil's secret. But, this whole process actually leaves us with a much bigger, much more provocative question. If we can fix the dead dirt in our own tiny backyards with just a few layers of compost, what does that mean for the future of large-scale agriculture and our global food supply? Food for thought. Anyway, thanks for joining me for this explainer, and happy testing.